What's up? I'm just tapping with the video with some more random ideas, and I just wanted to tap in with a
I
video.
forgot to turn that down or turn it off if you're gonna sit here.
I can't. They're talking. I can't talk.
I'm talking about your phone.
I I can't
You
talk on
can
my phone.
talk. No, you can talk, but the video you gotta turn down or turn off.
Yeah. So I'm right now just doing a video, and I want to give a shout out. That's an example I'm talking about. Um, I did I often quote, and I seen Nicholas Taleb, and I seen he starts off his book Skin in the Game. A lot of people don't have skin in the game, but they take the wins, but they don't have skin in the game. He starts that he starts his book saying that he quotes he honors I think Cicero and Ralph Nader, and he said that Cicero was a Roman among Greeks. My experience of life is a lot like being a Roman among Greeks, because most people they act very pretentious, and they act like they got a lot of things going on, but they're more so they're like they're entitled as Greeks, but they're as egregious as Greeks also. And so he would he much commends Romans, um, and that's a little bit like my experience as a person of color in where I live at in the Twin Cities. To give you an example, of what I'm talking about, right? So um like where I live at, you have basically three modes that you have. So I was if you I'm not gonna say what my name is, but if you Google me, if you were to Google me on if you were to Google me, there's a my name comes up because back in I think in 2000 2011 or 2000 about 2011 I was a member of student government at a training venue where I'm at, and I took the minutes for that. I took the minutes for that's like the notes for the meetings, and then uh and so that was my role. You had different people there. I had been at that school. I wasn't politically minded. I just respected people. I was just respectful to people, and so by me being respectful and not doing nothing egregious around people or to people, I started to have I sometimes you don't really know where your attraction is with people, but it more so comes from what people say about you. So you can act like anything, but most people they don't think for themselves and they can't think for themselves, so they think as a group. So what the group says about you is who you are in life. So I think at different times I had different and less pull in different seasons of my life, but it had to do with what people said about me. Next to I really don't know. You really don't know what people have to say about you. You do not know how people feel about you. But sometimes you can gauge people's responses to you very favorable or unfavorable, and it would have to do with what's being said about you or not at a season in your life. But at that time I was having pull, so I was recruited to apply to the student government, and then I applied to student government, but I didn't actually win on to the student government, but I nearly did because they tallied up the votes for the school, and then so the one of the student government, the actual secretary, I think one person they won on to student government, but they weren't like secretary minded, and then they had some different things going on that they fell out of, they fell off, they fell off, they someone fell the hell off of student government, and but shout out to that person because whatever they had in life, real or unreal, that made a road for me to come in. But then I was approached because they said that I actually had, 'cause the same person that encouraged me to apply said that I was like the next runner up in the school because I had a little bit of baby popularity, but not enough to like win like convincingly. But I had like a significant pull the tally. So then they brought me on to interview, and then the student government they liked what I had to. I think they interviewed the people that were close, and then they liked what I had to say, and then I came on with them. But at that time in my life, I didn't say next to nothing to nobody because of my background. As I was in my mid 20s, my solid the mid of my mid 20s, and I at that time I didn't talk in life to people, and I had stronger pull talking, but then less of a skill set for communicating when it counts. I was usually a strong communicator in life, but you can't really have a solid skill unless you exercise it But then when I was on that minute, that thing like that, I never said nothing to nobody, including student government. I didn't actually talk inside of student government. And one time they they asked me to speak. I had actually I was given an award. I was given student of the month, and then I was also given an award for like treating people well. And then they asked me what I had to say, and I was like, you know, like when I was a kid, I used to, well, I think I came up in front of the school, and I was like, I was telling a story about how when I was a kid, I didn't get to have a lot of video games. My one cool thing about my mom is that she wasn't about the video games, and she wasn't about the toy guns and stuff like that. I still got my hands on toy guns and video games, but nothing like I would have if she would have been down with that stuff. And then so I was telling them about visiting my friend, and I a little bit interspersed some of the time frames for the story, but I was telling them about if you can imagine going over to your cousin's house, you never get to play video games, but you get to play them at your cousin's house, and then you play with your older cousin and his friend, and they normally hand your ass to you. But then there was like one move, like back in the day, Scorpion, he used to have this move like, get over here! And you learn that move, and I learned that move as a kid in New Mexico, and I was like around some of my friends and their dad, and they couldn't, I just got stuck winning because they couldn't get past that move. Get over here! They do like back kick, front kick, low kick. I didn't do nothing. Get over here! And I get over on them. But then when I was later in life with my actual, would be like my cousin in African culture and his friend, I had one or two moves like that. It was like this game Tekken, and I had like studied the moves of this one fighter. He had like a kind of receding hairline, and I would just do this move where he would like get out, he would like punch him from, he would like backwards punch somebody, but I just reiterate that move over and over, and I would get over on my friend's lap. But my friend's my older cousin's friend, he was hilarious from Africa, and he had English was his second language, but he was actually stronger in English and like macking and capping on people in English as a second language than a lot of people's ass than my ass would be in English as a first language. But he would exactly pick the female character on those games because like most of the video games they would have like one or two female characters, less of female characters, but some of them, and they were cool too. Like I think Mortal Kombat has Sonya, and then Tekken had another female character, and he would be that character. And then if he would be winning, he'd be like, man, you're getting beat up by a girl. But then if I would beat him, he'd be like, man, you're gonna lay hands on a girl like that. So I said that in front of the school when I was getting the award. But I said that life is like that because they had like this motto of these like techniques of like being a professional, like timeliness, respect others, do the best you can, pay attention to detail. And I was telling them that if you can even just figure out next to one of these moves, you just keep reiterating that, and it can take you very far. But then another girl, like there was a woman there. This was like back 2010, and this is when it was still, there were a lot of inroads for like different identities and different orientations, but it wasn't as open as it is now. And she was more she was more masculine leaning. But I always simply respected people, especially back then, just as people as people. All people have strong suits and weak points, and so none of us has the standpoint to judge anyone. Um, but so I just had simple respect for her as a person, and she had respect for me too. And then one time she was speaking in front of the school and was like, sometimes the people that don't talk are the ones that got something to say. But at that time, I also one time my the reason I bring that up is because the president of that school, he was a pretty sad, he was an intelligent person. I remember one time they had all of our ass up there, like the student government, because we sat in front of the school every morning at like the daily meeting. But then one time they wanted to actually show in front of the school if we're actually that damn smart to be on student government. So they were like testing us about like words, and I think the word was what was the word? It was plethora. They asked us, do you know what the hell plethora means? And then I had been a little bit around some medical training, and I tried to guess at it. That was around, but I was wrong about it. And then the president of the school, he exactly knew what plethora means. It means like a multitude of options, a plethora. But some of that, it's not just from intelligence, but that, and it's part of what I want to go with this video, is that as your mind is developing your whole life, not only up until you're 18, but also through your 20s and then through your 30s, and I would imagine beyond that. And there's certain exact markers in development and jump off points that come along with different phases. And one of them for men is that a lot of times women are very strong around communication, especially as children. The YouTuber Tony Gaskins, he points out, he does a lot of things speaking for women, He advocates for women and some of the shortcomings of the tendencies of men who aren't making the most of themselves, and just people in general, like cues to really appreciate relationships, to get some traction, to get some tools for traction about getting in and out of relationships. Tony Gaston does salute to him for that content. But he said that he has, I don't mean to reference his business, but he's more familiar with young boys. But when he has been around young girls, he's appreciated that they can be very strong verbally from a young age, and it may actually play into the actual life modes and processes for a female human via in versus juxtaposed contradistinction of a male human. If you think about it, men, they have to be a little bit more egotistical, a little bit actually more childish. So for a man to win on around other men and also women, he has to be more daring, more romantic, for lack of a better word. Part of being daring and bold is related to being romantic, and it's also related to being idiotic. Women are charged with the well-being and welfare of their family, which is their children and also their husband. So you can say they may have some giftedness for common sense. And like an example of that is like the Order Osho would say that like a man wants to go to the moon, and then hey honey, I'm training to go to the moon, and a woman is like, and what are you gonna do on the moon? Kind of thing like that. But it's humorous, but it's just that we have different strong suits, you know. Another one would be that women tend to have a lot of lower body strength. So you might go in a gym and you see a woman making short work of a lot of the men with the squatting. That has to do with the fact that she has broader hips, but then also she has like strong legs that may support childbearing and some of the rigors that attend motherhood. And then men may have a higher upper body strength. Also, they say female have a tolerance for pain that be different than a man, even though men have they have a lot of duty upon them. But so females can be a little bit more cognizant of their environment and cause and effect at a younger age, and and also with verbalism, at a young age. But even like I've made another video, like sometimes I heard a woman one time just randomly say something like, what was it she said, an expression. She was like sometimes like there's a lot of like, if you imagine like woohoo, like there's like sometimes there's words like, you know, that word, but that word, it wouldn't be on the tip of your tongue as a man, it wouldn't be available to you as a man. But sometimes a woman can just yikes, like ooh yikes. Like a lot of times a man, that wouldn't be the first, that might be the exact appropriate expression for a situation, yikes, but that wouldn't be the first thing on your mind. But for a woman, they might have that command of that word like that. But then when men get older, like as a man, you get, so when you're young, you may feel awkward in a lot of social situations. As you get to your later 20s, you may feel comfortable in more of your own, both in more comfortable with your physical body because you have more experience of your body, but also you have more experience of your mind, and you have more experience of your mind and your body in different situations, such as you feel into yourself, you feel yourself out, and you feel yourself out more in a healthy progression. But also the vocabulary comes along for men. So sometimes men in their late 30s to 40s, they can have a command and a grasp around vocabulary. But it's not just vocabulary, but also understanding situations and people differently because of the experience. And I wanted to reference that a little bit with this video. But that man was an example of that. The president of that training venue that I was at, that training venue is named after one of your great people, as great near about peer of Ralph Nader, who also appears in the homage at the dedication at the beginning of the book Skin in the Game by Nicholas Nassim Taleb. He pays homage to, I think, Cicero and Ralph Nader. And if you know anything about Ralph, I don't know much about Cicero or like Roman and Greek people, but I know about who Ralph Nader is. My mother was part of something called PERG. I think that was like a lot of cars. Like now, most cars, I'm looking at some nice cars in the parking lot here. None of them have ornaments on the front of them. The reason that they don't have ornaments is because of Ralph Nader. Ralph Nader made it illegal for these cars to put ornaments on them because, heaven forbid, when people are struck by a car like civilian bike rider, that ornament is deadly on top of a car. But then also, Ralph Nader is responsible for the fact that we must wear seatbelts. That's because of Ralph Nader and what he did. So he has a lot. There's some people that you don't know of that have a lot of blood on their hands, a lot of blood on their hands. You think like somebody that gets in an altercation is formidable, but some people, like say the Nobel. There's a Nobel Peace Prize that's named after a man named Nobel, where I think he fathomed a form of ammunition. Like it may be like something to do with some of your first like heavy automatic weapons like of the mid 20th century. Nobel was responsible for that from some of his innovations in chemistry that led to more efficient and lethal gunpowder that's used in automatic weapons, and he has tens of thousands of millions of horrible experiences and atrocities and unfortunate untimely deaths and family members to miss people because of his innovation and his idea alone. Nobel did, and he felt a way about that. His conscience was heavy on him, and he's also responsible for the Nobel Peace Prize. But then the other end of that pendulum, you'd have like Ralph Nader, which he's probably saved as many or more lives as Nobel has. Ralph Nader. So Nassim Nicholas Taleb commends Ralph Nader as a near about living saint at the beginning of his book. And I can understand. And my mother was involved in PERG back in the day, if anyone knows about that. But then around a lot of college campuses, Ralph Nader was politically active, and my mother would be one to take him up on that. But then the person that this training venue was named after was a near about peer of Nader, like that, in the mid 20th century. But that president of the school, he took me to a meeting, a business meeting, and so if my name is Googled, I appear with that as attending that. It was a small, intimate business meeting, but it was very consequential for the city of St. Paul. Now, on a deeper extrapolation and correlation, not causation, if I may fancy myself, put a pat on the back. If you appreciate the pandemic, so during the time of the pandemic, the world was on shutdown. The world was defeated. The world was humiliated, defeated, isolated, scared. The world was scared for its shit, scared for its life. Grown ass men, any walk of life, you name it. Big bad, this, that, the big bad wolf, the regular wolf, the half ass wolf, the pushover wolf, the all forms of wolves. Most people are like some form of wolf or other because we're always wolfing down food and we're always wolfing about different stuff, like I'm on in this video. We were all scared for our shit. But then there was that atrocity around George Floyd, and that got the world to come together. Like, man, that's fucked up what happened there. So the world kind of came together, and there were a lot of protests and upheaval. I think that some of the George Floyd protests, he was a case in point and a tip off and an egregious atrocity, injustice. But it set off the greater injustices that we're adults, we're human beings on this planet, but we're having people tell us what to do because the powers that be, that is when people say the powers that be, they don't know what they're referring to. The people that control the means of production, access to and decision making upon the means of production, are the powers that be. So I just got somewhat mocked and humiliated in a restaurant on the beginning of this video. That's the powers that be. That person is an associate there, but they didn't have nothing nice for me. Nothing nice. They weren't nothing nice towards me. Now it's the middle of the night. That's one decent place you can go in a restaurant. You could say, yeah, you can shut the fuck up and be shut up in, and you might be cool like that, but you also stifle yourself every time you don't be yourself. So I can get outed very quickly a lot of places being myself. But I think the world needed to stand up for itself with the George Floyd protest, and the consequence of the George Floyd protest got us back outside. Because if you remember before George Floyd, our ass were scared to come outside, we were scared to breathe, right? Is that not ironic? The world has masks. We're mandated to have masks on our face. Then George Floyd is heinously suffocated, and then there's this protest. I can't breathe. So the whole world comes together about George Floyd. I can't breathe. But the whole world also couldn't breathe because we were stuck in home against our will. Is that not ironic? Is that not symbolic? Is that deep like that? Was that intentional? Was that not? Was that political theater? Heaven forbid. No person losing their life is theater. However, you call it a war theater. There's something of theatrics in drama and symbolism and unnecessary things, good and bad, but didn't have to be necessary for the sake of it in theater and in war. But maybe you could also say in the George Floyd atrocity, was he not a scapegoat for people coming together to get up out of the lockdown? Was he not? But I've said that George Floyd, he was slain in Minneapolis. Before him, Philando Castile was slain in St. Paul, about 3 or 4 miles away. It seems far away in the city, but it's not far away geographically. Philando Castile was a you could say a beta run. I don't mean to be I don't mean to be like along the line of conspiracy and stuff like that, or like that Machiavellian stuff. But you could ostensibly say that Philando Castile was a beta run, a precedent for famous slayings of African American men, also in the Midwest, also in Minnesota, also in the Twin Cities. Philando Castile, 4 years. Many people, not everyone, but many people know of Philando Castile. Many people of color would know of Philando Castile, but he was almost like a preparatory, whether by fate or divine appointment or just or causality, which nothing is random in causality. But Philando Castile was a case in point, a beta run, a lubricant, a prime example, case in point, a prior iteration of what happened with Philando Castile. I've said that where Philando Castile was slain, I had heinous experiences along that very that there's some places that are kind of strange to me. Philando Castile was slain at the convergence of like the Falcon Heights area in St. Paul. You have Lauderdale, St. Paul proper, Roseville, nearby Arden Hills, and also New Brighton, as well as some of your northern northeast Minneapolis district that all converge exactly upon Larpenteur Avenue, where George Floyd was slain. Also, Snelling Avenue, Fort Snelling, Highway 51 is a main artery of one of the arteries par excellence, probably the oldest arteries of St. Paul. The main northwest artery of St. Paul is Snelling. One of the main east-west is Larpenteur, but then also around that vicinity of Larpenteur, you have it's carved out. So you have those jurisdictions, precincts, auspices, principalities of those precincts that I mentioned right there. But then also you have the University of Minnesota that's right there. It has farm field. So the St. Paul it's like any other developed area. There's not much to speak of about farm activity in St. Paul. But right there, at Larpenteur, you have farm area carved out. You have fields right there in the middle of St. Paul. By the University of Minnesota, which that would have to have some political implications for those city jurisdictions, and the University of Minnesota throwing its weight around, and because a lot of if you grew up around these college campuses, like I grew up around the College of St. Thomas, where I grew up, there was a man a man who his son was crazy as hell. I'm not gonna blast the man or his son, but his son was crazy as hell. I grew up around his son. His son was a problem. Like my father was a professor at that school. All the professors at that school, the security at that school, the grounds crew at that school, they all knew this man's son because he was just crazy as shit. But his father had been in World War II, and he had some prop. He had a house that sat in the middle of St. Thomas. It's still there to this day. They wanted to wipe it off the map in the 90s. I'd imagine they still want to wipe it off the map now, but he wasn't about to budge off of that, because that he was a middle finger to that school, and his son was also a middle finger to that school and to the city because his son was a problem like that. And I knew his son like that because I couldn't help you because I grew up like a block away, but I wasn't friends with his son. I didn't get along with his son, but his son respected my instincts because I really had iffy instincts around him, and sometimes I would get into bullshit I'd get into contention with his son a little bit, just a little bit, as much as I could afford to, because he was formidable. He'll fuck someone over if he had to, but he respected in me that I was enough of myself that I was iffy around his ass because I could feel who type of person he was, and he could feel that I could feel the type of person that he was, and he respected that about me. But at a lot of these college campuses, you have some things are called an externality. That's a byproduct and a negative outcome to a vicinity. That a lot of businesses, factories, like when factories pollute things, that's an externality to the environment. But a lot of these colleges, they have externalities to the environment, that that are significant, and they get sticky sometimes at these colleges. These contentious things about property, about different things that you wouldn't see on the surface could be egregious about a college. And that was at St. Thomas with him, but I would imagine that the University of Minnesota, it has some stuff like that about boundaries, about this is our shit over here and you can't mess with it, Mr. City of St. Paul. You can't mess with it, Mr. Suburbs of Roseville. You can't mess with it, Mr. Lauderdale. You can't mess with it, Mr. North Minneapolis. I don't mean to actually. I'm not gonna even joke about Minneapolis because that's not something to play with. But and neither are the other areas too. But you're not gonna mess with it, Mr. I could imagine the University of Minnesota might have said some things like that. So that's just a lot of jurisdiction and boundaries and overlapping and say so and potential stepping on foot and different all kinds of stuff that would converge exactly upon Larpenteur, where Philando Castile was slain about one block. So Philando Castile was slain about 1.2/2 blocks east of the intersection of Larpenteur and Snelling on the street of Larpenteur, 1 to 2 blocks, but big blocks east of Snelling. But that farm area of the Minnesota is another less than not even an eighth, maybe a tenth or an eighth of a mile west on Larpenteur past Snelling towards Minneapolis, which is only about 1.5 miles west of Minneapolis. And then that farm area is exactly near about just starts just barely past Snelling, going west towards Minneapolis, and then it's not very big, but it's big on foot, but it's not very big. But um, that's a unique area there, and then because of that, that street Larpenteur is heavily it couldn't help but be patrolled heavily, I would imagine, because of the amount of police precincts that converge there. Yeah, man, we gotta fill up the quota and shit. So where are we gonna go? Where's the main place to pull people over? One is that it's close to the University of Minnesota, so you got a lot of drunk idiots in their apartments, and I'd be one of those idiots, not necessarily drunk and driving, but just another idiot around that area. In my day, but then as a child, also that area is by a lot of like businesses that kids would like movie theaters, and a couple malls. You had Har Mar Mar, Rosedale Mall. So I had some egregious experiences on that road when I was young, just doing stupid stuff as a kid and getting like ditched by my friends and have to ride a bike, walk home on a walk home on a dark night, walk home past a field on a dark road as 11 years old, shit like that, because of the shit that I was around as a kid, and the stupid shit my friends would do trying to get into movies that were stupid and shit, but just slipping away from our parents' oversight with some dumbasses, but then actually really get in some bullshit and have to be extended and vulnerable like that as a child like that. I experienced that right there on Larpenteur, near about where Philando was slain. May he rest in peace. And then so that was a perfect setup for something like that to happen to Philando Castile, because he attended the school that I did, Central High School in Minnesota, and he was my senior. He was about he would have been either a senior when I was a freshman or graduated the year before, so he was technically a peer of mine both by city and like being a person of color in the city, but then also we went to the same school, but what I wanted to say is that what's significant and could be overlooked and could have in like from me to you, what are all of our experiences are related. See, all of our experience in life is related one to the other because we are the same person. So when we do egregious shit, like when that person was being rude and shit to me in there, they're being rude to themselves like that. So you hate me? No, you don't hate me. You hate you. Don't hate me because I'm beautiful, but don't hate you too because you're beautiful too. But you're not beautiful when you're hating me. But uh um um so some of the stickiness of the Twin Cities, I think it's because of the jurisdictions and the competing of lines of authority in the Twin Cities. The Twin Cities are unique for that, but it's also a case in point, and there's a lot of like bullshit that comes out of that, I think, to this day. So going way back, a lot of people you would look, okay, so gangster, this, a lot of people are saying like this is gangster over here, right? Most people would say that where they're from is gangster over there, and it is. Nowhere is not gangster. You could probably go to like the middle of New Zealand and you could get that shit. Like I think like some of I've seen like famous like UFC fighters getting like accosted on the street for fights and stuff like that in New Zealand, no less. So there's no place that's good to go, that's all the way kosher nowadays. But where the real gangster stuff would happen would be the real least likely place to have. Most people don't give a damn what I have to say, but I usually tell people like I was getting trained up. I was getting trained up for my first school bus drop, and it was from a brother from the Minneapolis side, and he grew up in Minneapolis, and he was talking about like, yeah, man, it's rough, man, but we were getting trained a few miles away from Minneapolis. He's like, but I like it over here, man, because it's good to go, man. It's near about. I'm not just. he was saying it's good to go over here a few miles away from Minneapolis, but still the Minneapolis area. And I was like, see, you're tripping like that because I don't know nothing about growing up in Minneapolis, but I know that where you're least likely to expect, if you're thinking about trying to get away from bullshit, where you're least likely to find bullshit is where you're most likely to find bullshit. I'll say something like that, but people look past that. But the least likely place for to think of as gangster may be the actual gangster place. So back in the days of the speakeasies, like when alcohol was, so like nowadays people talk about like trap houses and running different stuff, like selling different stuff. I don't know about that, but I know that alcohol was the first version of that. So like now you have like imagine like imagine all the sturdy police officers, and all the sturdy firefighters and union people and even some of your blue collar trade people. Now imagine all their ass on bullshit about like how we're on trap stuff. Imagine as organized as they are, as formidable as they are, while like wearing like police costumes and stuff like that. Imagine them actually getting after it against one the other like that, and against civilians like that. That's what I imagine the gangster. That might be where the word gangster comes from in the older sense of that word. Their type of lifestyles, those type of people. But according to Umar Johnson, you can't undo and stop stuff like that. You just have to reorient it and re-incentivize it. So according to Umar Johnson, the Irish groups, some of the Irish groups were incentivized to and inherited the police precincts, the Italian, the fire department, so a lot of people don't appreciate the way that fire department, EMT, and police are like a dovetail, and they work together. So you say that, so there's no crime without punishment, but there's also no punishment without crime. People gotta eat, baby. So the crime gotta eat, the punishment gotta eat, and the EMT gotta eat. So you can't think that they're not in cahoots. Like sometimes like you damn near, heaven forbid somebody gets shot, you get shot and shit. Oh shit, fuck, you guys gotta come quick, man. They had grazed my arm with a BB gun, man. But that shit hurt, man. I need you to get up here quick, man. It had been a BB gun. Get up here real quick. And they get up here. Oh man, that's not a BB gun, man. That's just like a high powered Nerf gun that he hit you with, man. But it nicked you, man. But it's okay, man. All you need is really a band-aid. No, man, I need to get to the hospital, man. That shit hurt, man. Cause I don't want to bleed too much. Sometimes in my family, they have it's like some of they don't always have the blood clots in the family. So I really need a band-aid. I want to get to the hospital. I need to get this checked out. But make sure, but be careful because they could come back and shit. And then you get up in the ambulance and you're like, oh, okay, man, let's get this, man. Give me a couple of CCC of this and that and this, and then you see like, damn, man, they got more tattoos than the person that grazed me with the Nerf gun, man. Holy shit, are they also those people too? The EMT and the punishment and the boys are all them boys, and so they all got to make money. So it's related like that, but it goes all the way back to the days of the speakeasy, but then also too the unions and the trades that is the union, same thing, is part of that. So you can imagine back in the day, you would have had the gangster types, right? You could say that ostensibly, egregiously, generally speaking, the Italians, and the Irish, they had a lot to do with like the running of alcohol and stuff like that. I think your great Kennedy family comes from that line. I'm not sure if I think Kennedy would have been Irish. He comes from that. He's a case in point of that. But then you would have had, I can imagine, I'm extrapolating now, whatever are the trades now, the unions, they might have been like your contractors or not. So a contractor, right? A contractor. So I'm a contractor. We're going to have the contractor, but when the contractors come out, that's some serious shit because they're sturdy around all those tools. They got those skills you need, and they can clean up some shit. They can bury some shit. They can build some shit. They can break down some shit. They can do all that shit. So they made it so they're contractors now. They might have had contracts back in the past. I would imagine it's not too far of a skip and a jump between the union and trades and contractors is now. The type of skills they have, the sturdiness, the formidable they had. There would have been some iteration of that back in the day that wasn't all the way above board. I can imagine that. But the Twin Cities was actually like a duck off point, a hideaway, a stash point, a getaway, a way to get away from the heat. That's the history of the Twin Cities. The least likely place you would have expected of or ever heard of before. Twin Cities, St. Paul, Minneapolis, Minnesota. But even back then, according, because I met some old timers like around the Twin Cities that are a little bit, they're old enough. They grew up hearing stories about, they knew some of those people in their own lifetime, and they grew up hearing stories about that. They're familiar with that. I met some of those old timers when I was in a union. I've been in a union for as a driver, but they were not in the union themselves. See, sometimes you gotta be careful what you say, because you might actually meet people that are still members of that stuff. So I'm saying is that the I would be around these school. You can learn a lot around a bus base, because you got a lot of people from a lot of walks of life, but they have just, some of them are just a little bit more clever than the average bear to be good to go to get a job as a school bus driver, or just be sturdy in that type of work. They're a little bit more well put together than an ordinary person they can be, or they can be agreed. They can be, they're just people too, but they can be a little bit of a different cohort and swath sample than ordinary people at a school bus base. And so I actually met an old timer. He never said nothing. He was a para. He was like he makes sure the kids are good to go. But I actually didn't know what his voice sounded like. I would see him around the base. He would look a little bit like bummy, because he would take the bus, and he could tell he was living a little bit rough and stuff like that. But he did that job. But I didn't actually know what the man's voice sounded like. But then I was talking to this older lady. This lady, she was just in the process of losing her CDL when I met her, because her health had failed. So she was one of the main ones onboarding me. She got me good to go when I was getting hired on, and then about to get my training. And then but then as soon as I did that, now she made a couple rude ass comments to me in my training, and then she lost her CDL. So I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit smug about that when she lost her CDL, but it's still sad, it's serious. But then she rode with me a couple times because I needed some backup when I was a new driver. And then we got to talking one time in the break room, and she was talking about, like, I was talking about, like, I made a joke. I was like, what if you had some company come out and visit you to your city, and you did with them, you did nothing. I had heard another driver when I was a piece of driver joke up like that. What if you had some company and you showed them nothing? But then she was like, oh, see, if I had company, they're in Minneapolis. If I had company, I'd take them over to St. Paul, and we'd go to the Wabasha caves. They say they're spooked, they're haunted there, because that's where the gangsters used to go. And then when they would be getting drunk, then they'd get over on them with the Tommy guns in the speakeasies, in the caves, in the Wabasha caves. So they're actually really still haunted. And then the old timer was like, what did you say about Wabasha? And then I got to talking to her. She's like, oh yeah, St. Paul is really a gangster city. He's like, you're damn right about that. St. Paul is a gangster city. But they didn't bring that shit to Minneapolis, because Minneapolis wanted too much money. Minneapolis is full of dirty cops, man. Fuck Minneapolis. And we're in Minneapolis, and he lived his whole life in Minneapolis. No disrespect to Minneapolis, so I'm just quoting the man humorously. But that just shows you that there's a history of contention and a little bit of gray area between St. Paul and Minneapolis, the way that the jurisdictions line up like that. But then, so what I'm extrapolating is that some of the gray area, the nuance, the ambivalence between the tension between the cities, the politics, different companies, businesses, but also the police, no less. And the public's relationship with the police, no less. It can create the atmosphere for dirty cop activity, resenting cop activity, whatever would have led up to and attended, or maybe undertrained activity. Like, I think that when Philando Castile was slayed, you could say that cop may have been undertrained and or incompetent, because he was triggered, no pun intended, by some, he escalated something that didn't need to be escalated. So he was either scary or undisciplined, untrained, and or incompetent, or potentially egregious or dirty, or all of the above. It would have to be some combination for Philando Castile. But then with George Floyd, there was some dirty. I think that cop had some dirt on his name. The cop that did that. All the cops, see, they were dirty enough. They were dirty enough to stand by and watch that shit. And a lot of people now, a lot of your people, like sturdy people, professional people, bus drivers, stuff like that, they can be as complicit. You would call those other. So you had at least one dirty cop with George Floyd, but then the others were complicit to that bullshit that was dirty, which is as bad as being complicit, because it sponsors and allows and creates the opportunity for the bullshit, the complicit stuff. And a lot of your professionals around here, your some of your like your. So if you have a job for the Twin Cities, right? It's not actually ran by Minnesota. It's ran by the Metropolitan Council. They're I don't mean to put dirt on them, but the Twin Cities has one of the finest infrastructures, or it has the reputation of one of the finest infrastructures in the nation, and is replicated. You know you're good when people emulate you. The Twin Cities is emulated for its infrastructure, but it's ran by the Metropolitan Council. They're